So imagine stepping outside your front door right now.
Okay.
You walk down the sidewalk, maybe you head to a local park, and you just sit down on a bench.
Right. A completely mundane act.
Exactly. Or maybe you just place your backpack on the ground next to your feet to, like, tie your shoe. But imagine if simply doing that, just sitting there or setting your bag down, could actually result in your arrest.
Wow. Yeah.
And not because you were harassing anyone or causing a disturbance, but simply because you exist in that public space.
It sounds like a sort of dystopian thought experiment, I mean, when you put it like that.
It really does.
But for a very specific, highly vulnerable demographic in this country, that scenario isn't hypothetical at all. It is just the daily mechanical reality of navigating the legal system.
Yeah. And that is exactly what we are getting into on today's deep dive. We are looking at a piece of legislation out of Delaware House Bill 135.
Right, HB 135.
Yep, and we're looking at it through the lens of an article by Kayla Robbins, which was published in Invisible People.
Which is fascinating, how this one incredibly small state is attempting to rewrite the fundamental rules of public existence, really, for unhoused people.
Right, and I want to be super clear with you listening right now up front. The source material we're using comes from an advocacy organization, so obviously it has a very distinct political viewpoint.
Right, definitely.
But our goal for this deep dive is purely forensic. We are stripping away the politics, left or right, to just look at the raw mechanics of a law that could completely change how public space works.
Exactly. We're just exploring the text of the bill and the, intense debate surrounding it without actually taking a side.
Because the stakes here, they go way beyond local zoning codes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Actually-
we're looking at this wild collision between constitutional law, city planning, and just the basic biological necessity of human survival.
Yeah.
But to understand why Delaware is pushing HB 135 right now, we have to kind of zoom out and look at the national landscape.
Because legislation like this doesn't just, materialize out of thin air.
Right. It's a direct response to a massive shift at the federal level, specifically the Supreme Court's Grants Pass decision.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of that real quick, because Grants Pass really is the catalyst for everything we are talking about today.
It is, yeah.
The Supreme Court ruling essentially lowered this federal shield that had previously protected unhoused individuals in certain jurisdictions.
Mhm.
It basically opened the door for municipalities all across the country to strictly enforce camping bans,
Right, handing out tickets and arrests to people slipping or just living in public spaces.
regardless of whether those people actually had another place to go.
Exactly. And that created this huge domino effect.
Oh, so?
Well, think about it. When one city implements a strict camping ban and, starts handing out fines, the unhoused population doesn't just disappear.
Right, they have to go somewhere.
Exactly. They're often pushed across city or county lines into neighboring towns. So it creates this sort of municipal race to the bottom.
Ah, I see.
Towns feel pressured to enact these really punitive ordinances just to avoid becoming the default destination for everyone being pushed out of the next town over.
So by introducing HB 135, Delaware is basically trying to build a state-level dam against that tide.
That's a great way to put it.
The bill's sponsor, Representative Sophie Phillips, she framed the core goal of the legislation by stating, and I'm quoting here, HB 135 will not allow arrests and fines simply for being homeless, specifically if they have nowhere else to go.
And that phrase right there, if they have nowhere else to go, that is the linchpin of the entire legal framework here.
Right.
Because the bill is fundamentally an attempt to restore Eighth Amendment rights within the borders of Delaware.
And the Eighth Amendment, just to remind everyone, protects against cruel and unusual punishment.
Yes. And in the context of homelessness, it really all hinges on this legal distinction between criminalizing an act versus criminalizing a status.
Okay, so an act is something you actively choose to do, like you choose to break a window or steal a bicycle or vandalize a bus stop. Right, exactly.
Well, a status is just a state of being.
Right. And the argument underlying HB 135 is that if an individual has absolutely no access to shelter, like if every single bed in the county is full, or maybe they just don't qualify for the available beds,
Yeah.
then being unhoused in a public space isn't a deliberate criminal choice. It's a biological status.
Because humans have to sloop. They have to sit down eventually.
Exactly. Punishing someone for a biological necessity when they have zero legal alternatives is, according to the bill's proponents anyway, the very definition of cruel and unusual.
It's kind of like getting a traffic ticket, not because you were speeding or running a red light, but simply because your car was turned on.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Like, you aren't doing anything inherently dangerous. The engine is just running because it literally has to be in order to function.
Yeah.
But you're being penalized simply for the vehicle's state of existence.
Right, right.
And taking that even a step further, it's punishing you when you literally don't have the keys to turn the engine off. That is the exact tension this bill is trying to resolve. It aims to protect the baseline existence of unhoused residents from just triggering this endless cycle of arrests and citations.
So let's look at how that actually translates from, theoretical constitutional law to the actual pavement.
Okay, sure.
Like, what specific actions does this legislation protect if you are out on the street?
Well, the legislation explicitly carves out protections for what it defines as life-sustaining activities in public spaces.
Life-sustaining activities.
Yeah, we are talking about basic things: sitting, standing, sleeping, and eating.
Yeah.
Under HB 135, if you are performing these basic, unavoidable activities in a public place and you genuinely have nowhere else to go, the state says it cannot be considered a crime.
But the protections don't just stop at the physical body, right? Because the source material outlines how the bill pulls the Fourth Amendment into the equation, too.
It does, and
Which feels like a massive legal shift.
it's a profound shift in how we define property. The Fourth Amendment protects citizens from unreasonable search and seizure.
Mm-hmm.
But we are so conditioned to think of this in terms of bounded private spaces, right? Like your house, your apartment, your car.
Right, places where police usually need warrant or probable cause to search.
Exactly. But HB 135 takes those exact same constitutional protections and anchors them to the belongings of unhoused people stored on public property.
So like a tent, a shopping cart, or a backpack sitting on a public sidewalk is suddenly shielded.
Yes. The state is legally recognizing those items as protected property.
Right.
It's basically giving an unhoused person in a city park similar property rights to a housed person sitting in their own living room.
That's wild. So the logic of the bill dictates that merely being outdoors doesn't mean you automatically forfeit your constitutional right to be, secure in your belongings.
Right. The lack of four walls shouldn't just dissolve your Fourth Amendment rights.
Okay, but wait, I have to step in here and play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Because I'm trying to think about how this works in practice, and it sounds incredibly broad.
Okay.
If I'm listening to this right now and thinking about my own downtown, the immediate question is, does this mean public spaces just become an unregulated free-for-all?
Yeah, that's the immediate fear.
Like, can anyone just pitch a massive tent right in the middle of Main Street, block a crosswalk, and just claim Eighth and Fourth Amendment immunity?
Well, no. And the text of the bill anticipates that exact concern. It establishes some pretty firm boundaries.
Okay, good. Like what?
Well, these life-sustaining activities are only protected if the person is not blocking traffic and not creating a hazard.
Ah, gotcha.
You absolutely cannot obstruct a public right-of-way. You can't block a wheelchair ramp. You can't barricade the entrance to a private business.
So the basic rules of public safety and accessibility remain fully intact.
Entirely intact.
But then who defines what a hazard is? Because, if I'm a city official who absolutely hates this bill,
Right.
can't I just instruct my police force that a sleeping bag on a wide sidewalk is technically a tripping hazard and just arrest the person anyway? It seems like a massive loophole.
It is a friction point, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the legal standard usually requires the hazard to be objective and demonstrable, not just a subjective annoyance.
Okay.
So a sleeping bag tucked securely against a retaining wall on a 10-foot wide sidewalk. That would be very difficult to successfully prosecute as a legitimate tripping hazard under the scrutiny of this bill.
Right.
And furthermore, the protections of HB 135 only apply until a viable alternative is provided.
Wait, explain that.
If an unhoused individual is offered access and transportation to an adequate indoor shelter and they refuse it, the protections evaporate.
Oh, wow.
The individual is then subject to all the standard local ordinances.
So it always comes back to the lack of options. The moment a real option is placed on the table, the whole legal equation just reverts to normal.
Exactly. And local governments still retain the power to enforce reasonable time restrictions on public places, too.
Like park curfews.
Right. If a city park closes to the public at midnight, that curfew is still valid, provided it is enforced equally against everyone.
So a police officer can clear the park at midnight. They just can't selectively enforce the curfew only on people who look like they're carrying all their belongings.
Exactly.
Okay, let's shift the focus to another demographic covered by this bill. Because beyond just sleeping on a park bench, HB 135 tackles a massive, often invisible segment of the unhoused population.
Yes.
People who essentially carry their homes with them.
Mobile homelessness. It is a rapidly growing reality everywhere.
And this bill includes specific carve-outs for people living in recreational vehicles, vans or cars parked on public property.
It does.
And that clause addressing vehicle residents is fascinating to me because it acknowledges people who technically do possess shelter, right? Like they have a roof, they have doors that lock, they might even have a small stove in an RV. What they lack is a legal plot of land to anchor it to.
Right. And that creates an incredibly precarious existence. So under HB 135, state and local jurisdictions are stripped of the ability to force people to move solely because they're living inside their vehicle.
Assuming the same public safety conditions apply, of course.
Of course. The vehicle still has to be legally parked according to standard public parking regulations, and it can't be impeding traffic.
Meaning, if someone in a van is legally parked in a standard parallel spot on a residential street, a city can't just tow them away simply because a homeowner called and complained that someone was sleeping inside.
Exactly. The presence of a person inside the vehicle no longer transforms a legally parked car into a code violation.
Wow.
And crucially, if a vehicle does need to be moved, like perhaps for scheduled street sweeping or because it's actually overstayed a legitimate 72-hour parking limit, the bill mandates a procedural pause.
A pause? Like what kind of pause?
The resident must be given the explicit opportunity to relocate the vehicle themselves before the city can initiate a tow or issue a citation.
Oh, which fundamentally changes the stakes for these folks.
Hugely.
Because for someone living in their car, a tow truck isn't just an inconvenience or like a steep impound fee.
Right.
A tow is the immediate non-judicial confiscation of their home, their shelter, and all their worldly possessions in one fell swoop.
Yes. When a city tows a vehicle used as a primary residence, the almost guaranteed result is that the individual ends up entirely unsheltered on the pavement.
Right.
The impound fees accumulate faster than the person can pay them, the vehicle is lost permanently, and the municipality has effectively manufactured a brand new case of street homelessness.
Which just exacerbates the exact crisis they are trying to manage in the first place.
Exactly. So HB 135 attempts to freeze that whole impound spiral.
Okay, so the sponsors frame this entire package as basic constitutional alignment and practical harm reduction.
Yeah.
But the blowback from local governments and the business community has been fierce.
Oh, very fierce.
If this is just about protecting constitutional rights, why are mayors and business groups fighting it tooth and nail?
Well, the opposition is rooted in the very real, immediate pressures of managing a city. For the business community, the concern is highly pragmatic.
Sure.
Business owners fear that the visible presence of unhoused individuals lingering near their storefronts, shielded by these new protections, is going to deter paying customers and damage foot traffic.
And to be fair to the source material, Kayla Robbins pushes back on that perspective, arguing it's an incredibly short-sighted view of economics.
She does.
The counterargument there suggests that if society focused on providing secure housing for these individuals, they could eventually stabilize and become future-paying customers themselves.
Right, which is that long-term macroeconomic argument for the housing first model, which is well documented.
But a small business owner is worried about making payroll this Friday.
Exactly. However, looking closely at the text of HB 135, it is important to clarify that the bill does not rewrite private property laws.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
Police maintain full authority to remove people for trespassing, loitering on private property, or, engaging in any criminal activity.
So if an individual is blocking the entrance to a cafe or causing a disturbance inside a store, the business owner still has every right to have them removed.
Absolutely. The protections strictly apply to non-criminal actions on public property.
But honestly, the business concerns seem to pale in comparison to the alarm bells ringing at city halls across Delaware.
Oh, local governments are terrified of this bill.
And it all revolves around a legal concept called sovereign immunity.
This is it. This is where we see the actual mechanism of enforcement, the real teeth of HB 135.
What is sovereign immunity, for those who don't know?
Sovereign immunity is basically the municipal force field.
The force field.
Yeah, it's a foundational legal doctrine that essentially dictates the government cannot be sued for doing its job without its own consent.
Okay.
It exists to protect state and local agencies from being paralyzed by endless civil litigation over every minor policy decision they make.
And HB 135 proposes turning that force field off?
It hands the remote control directly to the citizens.
Oh,
There's a really revealing quote in the source material from State Representative and House Minority Whip Jeffrey Spiegelman about this exact mechanism.
what did he say?
He said, and I'll quote this directly, "This is a cudgel. This is, if you don't do as we say, you can be hit by a civil rights lawsuit."
Yeah.
That is a very, very dangerous situation, especially at a time when every single one of us would love to have more businesses attracted to the downtown development districts.
A cudgel. Let's break down how that cudgel actually swings. Like, how does a law like this translate into a lawsuit against a town?
Well, the bill waives sovereign immunity specifically regarding the rights of the unhoused that we just talked about.
Okay.
First, it allows homelessness to be used as an affirmative defense.
Meaning what, exactly?
If someone is cited for violating a city ordinance, say sleeping in a park, they can go to court and use their literal lack of housing as a legal defense to get the charge dismissed.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the second part is the real threat to the cities. It grants the state attorney general and private citizens the right to file civil lawsuits against local governments, agencies, or even specific officials who violate the act.
Wait, so the state isn't just sending a strongly worded memo asking cities to be more compassionate.
No.
They are authorizing everyday citizens and advocacy groups to drag their own local governments into court, demanding financial damages if a city, say, orders a police sweep of an encampment without offering shelter first.
And that liability is what terrifies local leaders. A single civil rights lawsuit can cost a municipality hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and settlements.
Which bleeds the budgets they rely on for, like, downtown development.
Right, which is why Representative Spiegelman sees this as a dangerous weapon that will bankrupt towns.
Yeah.
But conversely,
Yeah.
the bill's supporters see this waiver of sovereign immunity as the only functional way to ensure compliance.
Right. Because without the financial threat of a lawsuit, proponents argue cities will just ignore the new rules and continue the sweeps as usual.
It sets up this profound municipal tension.
You have towns weighing the massive financial threat of a civil rights lawsuit against the daily reality of managing police encounters for people who are just trying to exist outside.
Exactly. And navigating that tension really forces us to confront the underlying assumptions that drive so much of the debate around homelessness in the first place.
Which brings us to probably the most persistent narrative you hear whenever public encampments are discussed. The assumption is almost always they don't even want shelter. They prefer being out there. You know, they refuse the services we offer.
It is the default justification for aggressive encampment sweeps everywhere.
Right.
Because the operational logic is simple. If the unhoused population is actively refusing the help provided, then the only management tool left for a city to use is law enforcement.
But when you look at the empirical data from Delaware that was provided in the source material, that narrative entirely collapses.
The numbers are pretty shocking.
Yeah, they are staggering. The article cites data from the Housing Alliance Delaware's centralized homelessness hotline, just for the year 2024.
Okay.
In that single year, 7,131 households proactively contacted the hotline, explicitly asking the system for help.
Over 7,000 distinct households. Navigating the system, waiting on hold, actively seeking a way off the street.
But out of those 7,131 households that raised their hands for assistance, only 952 were actually referred to housing assistance.
Right.
The rest were just met with a dead end.
When you have a system where roughly 86% of the people practically begging for shelter are turned away because there is literally nothing to offer them, it points to a catastrophic supply and demand failure.
The core issue driving the visibility of public encampments in Delaware isn't a widespread, stubborn refusal of services.
No, it is a severe mathematical shortage of emergency shelter beds, affordable housing units, and just basic support infrastructure.
Over 6,000 households were essentially told, "We believe you need help, but the infrastructure simply does not exist for you."
Which brings the ultimate strategy behind HB 135 into really sharp focus.
Right.
The lawmakers behind this bill are operating on the premise that a state cannot arrest its way out of a housing shortage.
So by using the cudgel of sovereign immunity, the bill is designed to take the tool of criminalization completely off the table.
Exactly. If a city knows that arresting someone for sleeping on a bench will result in a super costly civil rights lawsuit, well, The financial math changes.
The state is attempting to legally force local municipalities to divert the time, energy, and, funding they currently spend on police sweeps and citations and jail cells,
Right.
and instead invest those resources into actually building the affordable housing and shelter beds required to fix the root of the problem.
It forces the municipal infrastructure to confront the actual deficit of housing rather than using the justice system as a rug to just sweep the symptoms under.
It's an incredibly complex maneuver,
Yeah.
using liability to force urban development, and it touches the very core of what a society owes its most vulnerable citizens.
It completely flips the script on how we manage public spaces.
It really does, and it leaves us with a lot to process.
Definitely.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder as you go about your day.
Hmm.
How does your own community define the purpose of a public space? Is a sidewalk, a city park, or a town square designed purely as a conduit for movement and commerce?
Or is there an inherent fundamental right to simply exist in that space, taking up room when you have nowhere else on earth to go?
The next time you walk through a park, look at the design of the benches and ask yourself who they are really built for and who they are actively trying to exclude.
It's a question that challenges the very foundation of how we define community belonging.
It really is. Now, before we sign off today, we do have some special acknowledgments to make. Today, we want to send a very detailed and sincere thank you to Stephen Ferry. Stephen was born and raised right there in Delaware, and he is the author and creator behind the PH podcast.
And his work brings such vital, on-the-ground insight to these deeply complex issues.
Absolutely. And we must specifically mention the Perfectly Homeless Etsy store. If you're looking to support this kind of work, you really need to check it out.
Highly recommend it.
As Stephen says, Perfectly Homeless is more than a phrase, it's a perspective. Built from real life, real lessons, and the honest path of learning as we go, this brand is here to share the story of van life, homelessness, survival, and the human spirit behind it all. Every piece of merch helps support the channel, allowing me to keep exploring deeper topics, sharing practical insight, and building something meaningful from the road.
Such a fantastic, grounded perspective to end on.
Truly. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.